Never accept responsibility for an emotion you did not intentionally create. That single idea, that one principle, is the bedrock of everything we're about to break down. In this briefing, we are dissecting a powerful and often totally invisible form of control: emotional leverage.
Look, this isn't just a nice piece of advice. Think of it as a shield. It's the primary countermeasure to a specific kind of psychological warfare, one where your own conscience, your very desire to be a good person, gets used against you. This is all about understanding the mechanics of that attack so you can see it, you can neutralize it, and you can reclaim your own emotional space. So, how exactly does this work? Well, the entire strategy of emotional leverage hinges on turning your best qualities against you. Your empathy, your sense of duty, that deep-seated need to be a good person, they become weapons aimed right back at you. See, a manipulator doesn't break you down with obvious aggression. No, they're much smarter than that. They create the conditions for you to break yourself down with guilt. They literally architect a reality where your compliance is the only path to peace. All right, to really expose the system, we're going to move through 6 phases. First, we'll define the empathy trap. Then we'll dissect the anatomy of chronic guilt it creates. Third, we'll map out the actual mechanics of control. Fourth, we'll dive into the psychology of submission, why this stuff is so effective. Fifth, and this is crucial, we will arm you with the decoupling protocol, a direct countermeasure. And finally, we'll pull back to see the principle of power that governs this whole dynamic. So let's start with phase 1, the empathy trap. You've got to understand this isn't a single event, it's a strategic, corrosive process. It's the hidden cost of having a conscience when you're dealing with someone who is perfectly willing to exploit it. The manipulator's goal here is to subtly create an environment where their emotional comfort becomes your primary job. Any attempt you make to set a boundary, to prioritize your own needs, is framed as a direct attack on them. It makes your submission feel like the only moral choice you have. And that trap, well, it systematically creates what we're looking at next, the anatomy of chronic guilt. This is the internal state the whole manipulation is designed to produce, and it's a kind of constant, low-grade psychological torture. It's not just feeling bad about one thing. It's this pervasive, ambient sense that your very existence is a problem for someone else, a problem you are perpetually obligated to solve. It's a weight that just never, ever lifts. And this pattern creates a set of symptoms that might feel really familiar. First up, crippling anxiety and confusion. You start to lose your grip on what's real, constantly second-guessing yourself. You start asking, wait, am I the bad guy here? Then comes this profound decision paralysis. You can't make a simple choice without running a simulation of its emotional impact on the other person. This leads right into the third symptom. You become a perpetual manager of their distress. Your life turns into this exhausting, endless exercise of anticipating and soothing their feelings. And the end result? A pervasive sense of helplessness. You feel trapped because, well, you are. So how do they induce this state? The main tool is something called moral inversion. This is the absolute linchpin of the entire system. It's a strategic move where a manipulator takes a healthy, necessary action, like you saying no, and they masterfully reframe it as a selfish, immoral act. They literally invert reality, making their sadness your fault. Their disappointment becomes your crime. They transfer the emotional responsibility for their internal state directly onto your shoulders. And why is moral inversion so devastatingly effective? Because it is specifically designed to trigger something called identity threat. For most of us, being a good person is core to who we are. Identity threat is that sickening, gut punch of stress you feel when you're accused of being selfish or uncaring or cruel. That fear, that deep, primal fear that you might actually be a bad person, that is the leverage point. That is the psychological pain they manufacture to make you desperate to escape right back into compliance. Okay, this brings us to section 3. We're going to shift gears here into a very detached analysis of the mechanics of control. We've seen the psychological impact, now let's look at the engine that drives it. We're going to break this down like it's a machine because that's exactly what it is, a predictable, repeatable system for getting what they want. At the heart of this machine is the guilt compliance feedback loop. It runs in 5 stages. Stage 1, manufactured distress. This can be subtle, a heavy sigh, a sad look, a passive-aggressive comment. It's a performance of pain. Stage 2, right after that, is moral inversion. They connect their pain to something you did or didn't do. Stage 3, induced guilt. Their tactic works. It triggers your identity threat, and you feel that sharp internal pain of being the bad guy. Stage 4 is compliance's relief. To stop that pain, you give in, you drop your boundary, you apologize, you do whatever they want. And this is the key, stage 5, control reinforced. The loop is complete. You have just taught them that this exact sequence is a perfect way to control you. So let's be crystal clear about the most important moment. This is it. This is the moment the cage door slams shut and you realize you just locked it from the inside. The trap closes not when they apply pressure, but when you comply to relieve that pressure. Your action of seeking relief from the pain of guilt is the very thing that validates their tactic and strengthens the whole manipulative structure. You become a participant in your own capture, trading your freedom for a temporary moment of peace.
Now, over time, this feedback loop establishes a larger power dynamic we call emotional gatekeeping. This is where the manipulator becomes the sole decider of peace in the relationship. A good day is when they're happy. A bad day is when they're upset. Harmony isn't a shared responsibility anymore. It's a prize that they grant you only when you submit to their emotional terms. They become the gatekeeper of all connection, of all peace, of all approval.
Okay, we've seen the what and the how. Now let's move into the why, the psychology of submission. Why is the system so brutally effective? Why is it so hard to see when you're in it and so damn hard to escape? Well, it's because it exploits really deep, really fundamental parts of our own psychology.
So think of it like this. There are two competing mental states at play. On one side, you've got cognitive reappraisal. This is your rational mind. It's slow, it's analytical, it's clear. It's the state where you can see the manipulation for what it is. But the manipulator's goal is to force you into the other state, impulsive submission. And they do this by jacking up your cognitive load with intense emotion, guilt, fear, shame. This shoves you out of rational thought and into a fast, reactive state of emotional reasoning, where the only goal is to make the bad feeling stop now.
So let's just break down the specific exploits. First, as we've said, it's a direct attack on your need to protect your self-concept as a good person. Second, it uses fear conditioning. You are literally being trained, like Pavlov's dog, to associate setting boundaries with the punishment of intense guilt and shame. Third, it intentionally increases your cognitive load, creating emotional static to short-circuit your rational brain. And finally, it expertly leverages any high need for approval you might have, making their validation the drug you need just to feel okay. All right, now for the most important part of this briefing, the strategic countermeasure. Let's get into Section 5, the decoupling protocol. This isn't theory, this is actionable intelligence. This is the tactical language and the mental framing you need to dismantle this machine, even while it's running. The first step to neutralizing any trap is to see it coming. You have to learn to recognize the signal. And the signal is this. It's that sudden, powerful feeling of moral obligation that washes over you the instant after you've set a boundary. It's that internal voice that screams, you're being selfish, you're hurting them, you have to fix this. That feeling, that is not your conscience. That feeling is the alarm bell. It's the signal that a moral inversion attack has just been launched against you. So once you recognize that signal, you have to engage in strategic emotional decoupling. This is the core mental framework for the counterattack. It is the conscious, deliberate act of severing the link the manipulator has forged between your self-worth and their emotional state. It's the internal declaration that says, my value as a person is not determined by your happiness. Your feelings are not a reflection of my character. Now, for the tactical language. This is the script that actually does the decoupling. Let's break down why it's so powerful. I am sorry you feel that way shows empathy for their experience without taking responsibility for creating it. But your feelings are yours to manage. That's the critical move. It directly rejects the moral inversion and transfers emotional ownership right back where it belongs. And finally, and my decision stands, holds the boundary firm. It denies them the reward and it breaks the feedback loop. Now, a lot of times the manipulator will respond to the script with more ambiguity, more sighs, more vague accusations. Your follow-up move is the verification query. Asking, what specific need are you struggling to meet right now, is an incredibly powerful tool. It cuts through the fog of manufactured distress and forces them to be clear. It shifts the frame from their vague feelings to their concrete needs, and it exposes whether their goal is actual problem solving or just simple control. This brings us to our final section. Let's zoom all the way out and pull the single most important lesson from this entire analysis: the principle of power. This is the fundamental strategic insight that underpins this whole emotional landscape. The core insight is this: Volatility is vulnerability. A person who has to rely on emotional outbursts, guilt trips, and manufactured drama to influence you is showing a profound strategic weakness. Their power isn't real. It is entirely dependent on your reaction. They need you to feel guilty, to get flustered, to react, because without your emotional participation, their entire strategy has no fuel. They are not powerful. They are fragile. And the counter principle is just as true. If volatility is vulnerability, then stability is the ultimate power resource. The person in any system who can stay emotionally regulated, clear-headed, and stable in the face of pressure is the one who holds the real power. Your stability isn't passive, it's an active defense. It is the circuit breaker for their entire machine. It's your greatest weapon. And so, we end where we began. But this is more than a quote now, isn't it? It's a strategic directive. It's the filter you can use to analyze every emotional demand placed on you. It's the principle that lets you decouple, hold your ground, and operate not from a place of reactive guilt, but from a place of stable, sovereign power. Your feelings are yours. Theirs are theirs. Never, ever confuse the two.